The Hypnobirthing Tool Kit is a complete hypnobirthing and birth preparation course helping you to go into the birth of your baby with confidence and positivity. It's completely self-paced with pre-recorded videos, presentations, audios, PDFs, plus monthly live classes. It's a more affordable and flexible way to learn hypnobirthing and help you have the positive birth experience you deserve. Follow the link in the description below to begin your positive birth journey today. Hello and welcome to the Bell Mama Hypnobirthing and Positive Birth podcast. My name is Ellie Waddington. I'm a hypnobirthing teacher, antenatal instructor and positive birth coach, and I'm here to help you go into the birth of your baby with a positive mindset. Every week I share my top tips, advice and amazing birth stories to help you go from fearful and anxious about your birth to positive and confident. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and let's get into this episode. Hey gorgeous mama, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This week I've got a really juicy topic for you. It's a question that I get asked all the time by my hypnobirthing clients, by random women on Instagram and Facebook, people in Facebook groups, people, when I talk to them about what I do and how I help people have a positive birth experience. And, they then ask me this question all the time. I get asked this all the time. And it's, well, Ellie, if I'm trying to work on my positive mindset, if I'm trying to think positively about birth, what do I do when the people around me are being so negative about birth? And this is such a common problem. This happens to all of us. It certainly happened to me when I was preparing for my positive birth experience. It happens to everyone, People are negative about what birth actually feels like. They're negative about the pain of birth. They're negative about your birth choices. And it can be really difficult. It can make it difficult to stay in that positive mindset when the people that you're surrounded by are being so negative about it. And I'm going to give you some examples. Perhaps your partner keeps talking to you about how scared they are that something's going to happen to you or the baby during birth, Or perhaps you have an older family member who keeps telling you how long and how painful their labour was and how it was like the worst pain they ever felt in their entire life. Or you have a friend that tells you that they had to have an emergency cesarean and they nearly died, And I don't know exactly why this is, but as soon as you announce your pregnancy, you become a magnet for everyone wanting to share their negative things with you, their negative experiences, the negative experiences of someone that they know, or they just want to tell you bad things about birth. And, I'm not for a minute saying that if you have a negative experience of birth that you have to be hush-hush about it. It's not a taboo subject. It's not something that you have to keep a secret. If you do have a negative birth experience, you absolutely should talk about that. You need to speak to people in order to process that. But the people to talk to are not a newly pregnant mum who's trying to now prepare herself for birth. That is absolutely not who you should be telling your negative birth stories to. So I think really the first step to kind of dealing with the negativity from people around you is first to understand why it is that they may feel like they need to tell you these negative things. And one of the reasons is because some people, if they're talking about, they decided to accept a certain type of pain relief, like an epidural or pethidine or something like that, they feel a certain amount of shame. They feel a certain amount of guilt or a sort of weakness, the fact that they felt they couldn't do it without pain relief. And so they almost have to exaggerate, almost have to big up how painful their labour was in order to justify the fact that they accepted the pain relief. Even though you're not judging them, and I'm not judging them, and most people aren't judging them for accepting the pain relief, but they judge themselves. And so they have to justify it by talking about how painful it really was. And I kind of liken that to If your husband goes fishing and they talk about a fish that got away, one that they nearly landed but they couldn't quite get it in the net, and they talk about how big and powerful this fish was, and they might be exaggerating a little bit just for effect, just to justify the fact that they couldn't beat this fish. It's kind of a little bit like that. And I'm not for a minute saying that people are lying about their experience of birth, that they're deliberately misleading about how painful their birth actually was. I'm saying that there might be a bit of exaggeration there just because they feel like perhaps they should have been able to do it without the pain relief, and that they feel guilty or weak for accepting the pain relief. So that's one thing to bear in mind when someone tells you about how painful their birth was and that they had to accept the pain relief. Just maybe bear that in mind when you are talking to them. Another thing that can crop up as well is that people, particularly the older generation, they feel that if you are making different choices to them, that's almost saying that the choices that they made are wrong. Even though, again, you're not saying that, I'm not saying that, no one's saying that the choices that they made were wrong, but they think that by you making different choices, you're suggesting that theirs were not the correct way to be. And you'll also find this throughout your parenting journey. So when you're talking about when you talk about the way you feed your baby, if you decide to breastfeed and someone else in your family decided to formula feed, they'll think that you choosing to breastfeed suggested that them formula feeding was the wrong course of action. Or if you're talking about which car seat to use, and this is a big thing because obviously car seat safety has come a long, long way in recent years. And so by you insisting that, you're going to rear face your child for 2 years, the older generation think that you're suggesting that the way that they parented, the way that they were doing car seats was all wrong. And it wasn't that it was all wrong. It was that it was different back then. They were given different advice. We didn't know as much about infant feeding or responsive sleeping or gentle parenting or breastfeeding or any of those things that you're going to have disagreements with. Because I'll tell you now that you will have people making comments and giving opinions on every aspect of your parenting. And so you need to get really, really good now at becoming resilient to those opinions, because all they are at the end of the day is opinions. They're someone else's opinions. They don't matter because they are not raising your child, okay? And they all have opinions on the way that you feed your child, the way that you parent your child, and it all starts now, basically. They all have opinions on the way that you give birth to your child. So you really need to start getting resilient to those opinions and also feel comfortable in putting down those boundaries as well to protect your mental well-being. Now, there are just going to be some people that there's no reason to it. There's no rhyme nor reason to it. They just enjoy scaring new mums. And again, I don't know why this is. Maybe they think of it as kind of like a rite of passage because it happened to them when they were pregnant, or something like that. But I can remember when I was pregnant with my first baby, with Wilfred, and I just put a Facebook post out one morning towards the end of my pregnancy saying, oh my God, I've been up all night with Braxton Hicks, so uncomfortable. And someone responded with, oh my God, if you can't handle Braxton Hicks, you'll never be able to handle labour. And I was like, what? Like, why was that necessary? I didn't say I couldn't handle the Braxton Hicks, first of all, but also, I'm just venting, I'm just complaining. There's absolutely no need to write something like that. Now, whether she meant it as rude or hurtful, I don't know, but it was just, it was just unnecessary. And you'll get loads of little things like that towards the end of your pregnancy. You will get that loads. And there's just no rhyme nor reason to it. Now, right, so I'm going to give you some tips now for ways that you can start to deal with this. Whatever stage you're at in your pregnancy, whether you're just beginning your positive birth journey, whether you're towards the end of your pregnancy and you're getting fed up with all the negativity from people around you, there are some tips here that you'll be able to take away and start to implement more or less straight away. So the first sort of thing that I'll talk about is your partner, whether your birth partner is your life partner, the other parent of your child, whether they are, your spouse, your husband, your wife, whether your birth partner is going to be your mum or your sister or a friend or another female relative, or whatever. Your birth partner is going to be your strength. They're going to be your stability throughout your birth journey as your labour begins, and they have to be a positive force. If there is any doubt in their mind, if there is any instability, if there's any wobbles, then you will pick up on that, and that will start to affect your mindset. So they have to be strong and stable, and they have to, they don't have to agree with all your choices, but if they disagree with your choices, they have to be able to keep that to themselves. They have to be able to keep that to themselves and not project their fears onto you, because ultimately that's all that'll happen, is that their fears will project onto you, and lots of these will become like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you have a partner who isn't on board with your birth choices, whatever they may be, or if they have fears around birth, if they have fears about something happening to you or the baby or anything like that, then they have mindset work to do. If they're going to be the ones supporting you in your birth journey, they have to be prepared to do the mindset work, and that's all there is to it. And a great thing that most birth partners do, when I work with pregnant ladies preparing for their positive birth journey, most of them bring their birth partners with them to the course, and their birth partners do the course along with them. And this is a great way for them to get involved and to start to understand what it is you're trying to achieve. Because if they can understand the techniques, if they can understand the way birth works, if they can understand what you need in your birth journey, then that will really it'll help them to think more positively, and it will help them to support you positively as well. And actually the Hypnobirthing Tool Kit, which is my online hypnobirthing course, that actually has a section just for birth partners, so that they can get involved, they can learn what they need to do in order to support you, and it has a guided relaxation just for them as well, to help to change their mindset if they're starting to become a little bit nervous about their role and supporting you in birth. So that's a great thing that they can do. They can get involved with the preparation, they can learn your birth plan, they can see what it is exactly that you're hoping to have during your birth, all the choices that you're making. They can understand your birth choices. It means that they can then help you make decisions, and they can be your voice, they can be your advocate. And it will really help to release their fears, any fears that they have about the birth journey and supporting you and what their role is going to be. Being part of the preparation process, it actually really, really helps them to process their mindset. And I see this is one of my favorite moments actually, when I'm working one-to-one with a couple. Usually the birth partner tends to start off quite skeptical about mindset techniques, and they start off quite negative, and you can see this in their body language and the way that they're sat there. And then you start to see pennies drop, throughout our sessions together and our time together. You start to see pennies drop where they are realizing things, and then they start to think more positively. And these are my favorite moments, is when the birth partner starts to come round. I love that, absolutely love that. And it will happen. And if you get to a point where your birth partner maybe can't change their mindset, if they're still being negative, if they are still, they can't keep their fears under wraps, their concerns, if they're still being negative, then maybe you need to consider a different birth partner. Maybe you need to consider if there's someone else that you'd rather have in that room that will be a more stable support, a more positive presence there for you. Because having someone supporting you who is negative and can't sort of disguise their negativity, that will have an effect on your mindset in that birth room, and that's not a great place to be. I always tell women that actually no birth partner at all is better than a bad birth partner. So yeah, that's my first sort of tip, is get your birth partner to come with you to the Hypnobirthing course, to the birth preparation course, and get them to do all the preparation as well, and they will start to become positive about birth. Honestly, for most people, this is exactly what happens. So Next, we're going to talk a little bit about your family or your friends and family, people around you that you spend a lot of time with, that they want to share their negativity with you. You know, they want to tell you about their negative birth stories. They want to tell you about their friends' negative birth stories. They will question your birth choices. They will tell you that, you know what, giving birth at home isn't a safe thing to do when you need to be in hospital where the doctors and all the medical machines are. They'll tell you that, you know what, you probably can't, you're not strong enough, you can't do it without the pain relief, and you should just accept the epidural. This is a really, really tough thing because we love our friends and our family, and it can almost feel, you know, we grow up with this kind of good girl mentality, is what I call it, where we are told basically just to respect people and put someone else's comfort before our own. Like, if someone is telling us something that we don't want to hear about birth, we were raised to kind of sit in our own discomfort rather than tell them that actually they need to pipe down. Rather than telling them that actually they're making us uncomfortable, we have to sit in our discomfort. That's how we're raised, and this continues into adulthood, and we find it really, really difficult to get that across to people, particularly with the older generations, where you're taught to respect the older generations, you know, without question. More than anything, you have to respect them. And I really think we need to break some cycles. We need to be the generation that starts to break those cycles. I'm not saying that we need to start being rude to the older generation. I'm saying that we don't need to put their comforts before our own, particularly when it comes to something like birth, where mindset is such an important thing. Mindset is such a crucial part of the birth preparation journey. And if an older family member is affecting that, then you need to get comfortable with telling them, I don't want to hear this. Please stop talking about birth in a negative way. I'm trying to get positive about my birth. And I'd really rather you didn't say those things to me. And you're not being rude, you know, I mean, you might get to a point where you do need to be rude. But no, initially, putting boundaries in place it's not rude, and we need to stop thinking that it is. And most reasonable people, if you explain to them exactly what it is that you're trying to do with your positive mindset, and that their negativity around birth is having an effect on you, it's having a negative effect on you, then most reasonable people will just stop. You know, most of them will just stop, and they won't intentionally do that. Some may forget, you know, and they'll need reminding, but most will just stop. And the problem then becomes if your family members or your friends are part of the few that actually refuse to stop, if they can't stop talking about negativity around birth. And that's when you need to really be prepared to enforce those boundaries. I also recommend that you get your birth partner to be part of that crew as well. Your birth partner needs to be able to advocate for you and to enforce boundaries with you as well. But you need to be prepared that if someone isn't going to stop talking negatively about birth, you could put a boundary in place where you say, okay, if you can't say positive things about birth, then the topic of birth is just off the table. We're just not going to talk about birth together. Unless you can be positive about it. And if they can't manage that, then you might need to go one step further and say, okay, do you know what? From now until after the birth of my baby, I am going to have to distance myself from you. And that may not be something you want to do. Obviously, it depends on the family member or the friend or whoever, but you may have to. Your mindset right now, as I say, is everything, and you need to do things and put things in place to be able to protect that. So you may need to actually say to certain people, if you can't be positive about birth, then I'm going to have to distance myself from you until after the birth of my baby. And, during my last pregnancy, towards the end of my pregnancy, I actually had to leave the family WhatsApp chat. All families have like a group chat, don't they? Either on Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or whatever. And I actually had to leave the family WhatsApp chat because of all the negativity that was happening, even though they knew that I was planning a home birth and they knew that I was trying to get myself into a positive mindset, and they just couldn't stop themselves. So I left the chat. That wasn't the only reason I left the chat. The other reason was that I didn't want want anyone knowing when I was going into labour. And because I'm quite active on the family WhatsApp chat, so I knew that if they sent a message and I didn't respond for a couple of hours, that they would know that I was in labour, basically. So I was like, do you know what? I don't want anyone to know that I'm in labour, and I don't want any negativity, so I'm going to leave the family WhatsApp chat for a few weeks. And I think it was about 37 weeks or something when I was just starting to kind of, really boost my oxytocin levels, and get myself into that nesting kind of state of mind. And so I said, if anyone has any serious questions, if there are any emergencies, if anyone has a heart attack or anything like that, then you can talk to my husband and he will pass on any information to me that I need to know. And I also told him not to nag him about whether or not I'm in labour. I told everyone, look, once I have had the baby and I'm settled, and I will send out a notice to everybody, okay? I do not want to be nagged about whether or not I'm in labour or whether or not I've had the baby. That's obviously a bit of a sideline for this topic, but yeah, that's one of the reasons that I left the family WhatsApp chat, as well as the negativity. So, that's family and friends that we've just talked about. And the next tip that I have, this is my last tip, is to join a like-minded community. And this can be a community like in person. So for example, near me, there's actually a home birth community. There's a home birth. It's like a coffee morning. It's like once a month they have a meet up, a coffee morning. It's for the women that are in the local area that are planning home births, and they just get together and they chat and they have coffee, and they're all planning the same sort of journey. They're all trying to do the same sort of thing with their mindset, and it's great to be supported by people that get it, because I think a lot of us, we're surrounded by people that have had quite negative experiences of birth, because there was this massive, and there still is this big period where birth is becoming increasingly more medicalized, and it's really only now that people are starting to really push back and kind of take back their power and really question the choices that they're making around their maternity care. Whereas my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, whatever the doctor told you, you did not question it. You just did it without question. And that led to quite a few negative birth associations, certainly. And so we're surrounded by people that they think that is normal, and it's not normal. It's been normalized, and there's a difference with that. So find yourself a community of like-minded women that are going through the same sort of thing that you're going through, and that will go a long way towards helping your positive mindset, because you know that you can ask a question without just being met with, oh, just have the epidural, oh, just do what the doctors say. You can vent, and you can say these things, you can express these concerns, and you know that you're going to get answers and support from people that think like you, and that's gold. That's absolute gold. And you can also join online communities, Facebook communities. I know that there are some great natural birth Facebook groups, and the Hypnobirthing Tool Kit, my online course, that comes with you get to join a Facebook group of ladies that are preparing for their positive birth journey, and that sort of thing. That's gold. Again, just like if there isn't a community of women near you that are preparing for a positive birth journey, an online community is just as good. And you know what? That might be even better, because that if you have a concern or a question, or you just need to vent, that there'll probably be someone in a Facebook group answering at any time of day. Whereas if it was just a local group like that you meet up with, then you might only see them once a month or once a week or what have you. So yeah, find your community, find a group of like-minded women that are sharing in your journey. Another great way to do this actually is if you're doing an antenatal or a hypnobirthing course in person. If you're doing a group hypnobirthing course in person in your local area, then you'll meet women on that course that are obviously they're going down the same path as you. They're doing that kind of positive mindset work. So stay in touch with them, through your pregnancy and through your birth and beyond. And again, that's a great way to stay in touch and to build that kind of that supportive community. Right, so that is all from me this week. I hope that you have taken away some practical tips about what to do when the people around you are talking negatively about birth. If you have any questions at all, please do feel free to send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram. So enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the rest of your week, whatever you're going to be up to, and I will see you for next week's episode. Bye!